Line's good.
Never on.
Whoa.
Hard. Hardly.
Come on, Brent. Line's good. Got real close. The hair high, right? Try and hit 2/3.
Have they saved it for her? Yes, they have.
Ooh, welcome to Game of Stones, everybody. I am Sean Graham. Scott alongside, as always. Hello, Scott.
Sean, we're in the thick of curling season. How excited are you?
It's very exciting times. This is why we lift all those weights. It's this time of year.
It is this time of year. Sean, I just logged on to curling.ca, Curling Canada's website, and the image showing Scotties Tournament of Hearts.
Mm-hmm.
Can you go there and tell me what you see?
So on the homepage, Scotties Tournament of Hearts, Canada's top women's team compete for the national title in Mississauga, Ontario, and I see a sliding Kerri Einarson.
Do you notice anything weird about that sliding Kerri Einarson?
That sliding Kerri Einarson is throwing left-handed.
Left-handed Kerri Einarson. Who knew?
How about that?
Yeah, and the Scotties is reversed. So they took this image and reversed it for
reasons,
I guess. They couldn't have her sliding not into the page.
I mean, I guess.
Like if she was sliding the other
side?
way, it would be funny.
Like, I guess this way you see the Curling Canada logo on her pants.
But it's backwards.
It is. But if you did it from the other side, you wouldn't be able to see that logo.
Sure.
Right?
I guess so. Well, nothing like a good
sliding into the page.
Yeah. So, nothing like a good visual gag to open an audio podcast.
Yeah. So there you go. Good segue, Scotty. It is the Scotties Tournament of Hearts recap today. Plus, we got some stuff a little later. We'll talk about things to look for at the Olympic Games in terms of the broadcast, stuff to keep an eye out for, and something you can point friends to who might be new to the sport or only watch during the Olympics, things that they can look out for. So we'll have that. I'll put a timestamp down in the show notes below for that. But let's start, Scott, with the Scotties Tournament of Hearts, the aforementioned Kerri Einarson winning her 5th Scotties championship. Also the 5th for Val Sweeting, the 6th for Shannon Burchard, and the 1st for Carly Burgess. So congratulations to them. Somewhat interesting to me, Scott, and it was pointed out, and this is not to take anything away from Kerri Einarson nor Shannon Burchard, but half of Shannon Burchard's titles are when Rachel Homan's going to play in the Olympics. 2 of the 5 for Kerri Einarson is when Rachel Homan's not there going to the Olympics. Kind of just a curious stat there. I think my favorite stat, though, is as we sit here right now, Shannon Burchard has won 6 national championships and played in 3 world championships as a full-time player. That still remains my favorite stat. But a very good week for them. They only lost 2 games over the course of the week, both to Caitlin Laws, once in the round robin, once in the 1-2 game. But then they come back on Sunday night and beat Caitlin Laws in the final. It was not the most exciting game I've ever seen, but a 4-3 extra end victory for Kerri Einarson. The shot to remember is her shot in the 10th end. With the last rock down a point in a very tough spot, she makes a 20-foot angle raise to remove a Caitlin Laws stone, sticks it for the single, and then I think you and I might have disagreed, Scott, on Caitlin Laws' last one. We'll talk about that in a minute. But overall, impressions for you on Kerri Einarson and this 5th title?
I mean, it wasn't their most dominant event. You're right. They only lost 2 games, but they lost them pretty badly, those 2 games, the Caitlin Laws. And they weren't super, super sharp the rest of the event. There were games where they were, but when they were off, the results were a little bit mixed. Looking at the sort of overall analysis on the sheets, I'd say what they were able to do the best was keep the opponents from scoring multiples. They only let them score multiples in 14, 15, 16 ends where they scored multiples against, whereas they, on the other hand, had 34 against. So, or 34 ends where they scored multiples. This isn't hammer or whatever, but it includes all of it. But they were really effective at limiting the opponent's scoring, again, except in those 2 games against Caitlin Laws. So obviously they I say obviously, it seemed to me like they really benefited from playing the semifinal in the afternoon, where they were able to read the ice very, very well early, got the draw weight down, got the paths down, knew their rocks. And so when it came for the evening game, they were just that much ahead of Caitlin Laws and Team Laws when it came to those like little precise bits, right? And so that ended up being the difference in the end. The final we can talk about, it wasn't the cleanest game from either side, but Caitlin Laws gave up 5 steals all week, and one of them was the last one to win. So tough. I think it's tougher for Manitoba there. I won't say, well, Manitoba, it's tougher for Caitlin Laws. I won't say that Caitlin Laws lost the game, but I also don't think it's fair to say Kerri Einarson won. It's kind of like, for me, it was kind of whoever made the last mistake was going to be the one that lost.
Right. Yeah. And when you look at the steals for Caitlin Laws, you say 5 all week. 3 of them were in the last game. We're in the final. A steal in 2, a steal in 4, a steal in 11. And they did get a 2 themselves, but there were 7 points scored in the game. 3 of the points were scored with the hammer. It wasn't a game where there's a lot of offense generated. And what was interesting about that is if you watch back those 2 games they played earlier and the way Caitlin Laws was playing all week, with the hammer, she wasn't really playing corner guard. She was coming around playing the center. And so the change that Kerri Einarson and her team made was they just brought everything in. They were not throwing a center guard and letting Caitlin Laws get in there first and then having to chase. They were just coming in. Caitlin was hitting it most of the time, or on a couple occasions she did throw a corner, and that's not the way they want to play. So Kerri Einarson kind of dictated the play in that way, didn't let Caitlin Laws get into her comfort zone and how they wanted to play and how they won those first 2 games. So that fundamentally changed, I think, the strategy compared to what was happening earlier. And you did have a couple big misses in the game. Caitlin Laws had a shot in the 4th end for a blank and stuffed it. And that's a steal for 1. Kerri Einarson tried to blank in 7 and didn't quite get the 1 stone out. It was 2 stones that were overlapped, didn't get the top one out. I think undercurled a bit. And so she rolls out. There's a steal there. So just some mistakes that you don't expect from either of those last rock throwers in the final. And the percentages overall were good, but just not the most dynamic game strategically. And that was a direct response to the 2 games before from, I think, Kerri Einarson.
Yeah. And so all credit to them then for doing that, right? For being able to capitalize and understand how they were losing and make that change, make that adjustment. There was also an instance in the final when Reed Carruthers, I feel like he basically was the one that called timeout.
Yeah.
And said, whoa, what are we doing? Like,
right.
Because he came out and he had a very clear message of what to do. The team was kind of like, oh, okay. And rolled with it. So yeah, great job by Team Einarson to adapt to their situations that they were seeing on the ice, real conditions, and rather than just being sort of beholden to a predetermined strategy that they'd played all week. They said, well, it wasn't working, let's try something different.
Right. So in the last end, in the 11th end, a situation, Caitlin Laws is first. Kerri Einarson is covering the pin with hers, and the discussion is, do you peel the guard or do you try the come around? Now, there was a long guard and a short guard. So do you peel one of them or do you come around? Marcel Rock came out. He said, throw it now, win the game. I like that approach of if you peel, you might be in a worse spot next time. Yeah. This is probably your easiest chance to win. Just came up short once it got to the center. And then Kerri Einarson guards that side, the left side of the sheet as you look down on it. And so Caitlin Lodge tries a shot that I don't think was there. Very thin on one of Kerri Einarson's stones to get onto her stone in hopes of putting it back onto the shot stone. I thought that was not there, Scott. I thought just the momentum of the top stone moving again from the overhead to the left, even if it drags a little bit down, even if you slash it really thin, it comes somewhat straight back, it's always going to be moving slightly to the left. And it did make contact with the shot stone, but I don't think it ever gets enough of it that it moves shot stone far enough and you ever stay to score.
I agree. It wasn't there. Maybe we'll talk about our game from this week later on, but there was a shot like that I had to try, and I was like, I don't think it's there.
Right.
The other consideration was that she was running out of time.
Yeah.
Had already used the timeout on the first shot, as you mentioned, when Marcel Rock said go win the game. And that was really the shot that needed to be made, was that first one. That was the killer one. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. I'm watching the replay, and it's not there. No, I don't think so. She hits it a little thicker than I think she wants to.
Right.
In fairness, but even by hitting it a bit thinner, like all that it's going to do is maybe feather, like maybe split the two back ones off, and maybe your raised stone stays in for the win. But just, yeah, I texted my friend Cam, was watching it, and I said, I don't like this call. I don't think this is there. But again, then what was the other option?
There's no other shot. That's the problem. There is no shot. Like
kind of a long raise maybe, but
yeah. Or the they didn't think the chase was there. There was, I guess, if there wasn't enough finish on an intern chase, that's the only other thing. But if you're not getting the finish, then I don't know what else you try.
Yeah. I don't know if the chase was there. You're right. So tough, right?
Yeah.
Because if she plays the guard instead of the draw on the first one, or peels the guard, then she's got kind of both ways on the next, right? Because Einarson won't be able to guard both.
No, but she could freeze. If Einarson had come down and made a really good freeze on her own, then she really doesn't have a shot.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Right. So you're giving Kerri Einarson the chance to potentially win the game with the exact same shot. And I like the idea of, well, I'd rather throw the shot.
Yeah. Let me be the one to throw it and make it.
Yeah. So yeah. It was the final end was quite fascinating after what was a bit of a ho-hum game. And to be frank, what was kind of a ho-hum semifinal as well, where Kerri Einarson gets out to a lead over Team Alberta, and Selena Sturmey ends up winning that one 12-5. Again, not too much to talk about there. She gets a 3 in the second after a blank, gets the force, gets a deuce. So it's up 5-1 and pretty much in control all the way. The score gets a little inflated at the end with a 5 for Kerri Einarson when Selena Sturmey is doing everything she can to steal. But really throughout the game, Kerri Einarson was fully in control. Mm-hmm. On the other side of the playoff bracket in the 3-4 game, Selena Sturmey did beat Christina Black from Nova Scotia in that 3-4 game. And I was a little sad about this. Christina Black gets a deuce in 7 to take the lead, gets a 3 right back, and then steal for that 8-4 finish. 4 steals for Selena Sturmey in that 3-4 game. So a tough end for Christina Black. They were a really good story all week. I had a wonderful run through the round robin, only losing twice to Manitoba and Beth Peterson and Kayla Skurlik in the last game. Didn't really matter that last game as it turned out in terms of the seeding. Lost to Caitlin Laws in the Friday afternoon seeding, and then beat Taylor Stevens to get into that 3-4 game. So Scott, for Selena Sturmey and Christina Black, I think good weeks for both of them. Selena Sturmey in the last two events, I think, has demonstrated clearly that now that this was her third time, she was good the first time, more average the second time. I think she's established herself as a mainstay here at the women's level, and Christina Black, I think, certainly has done the same. Now, if you look at the CTRS points moving forward, qualification for next year, things are going to get complicated, but so many teams are going to shift around that maybe you don't really even have to look at the CTRS points too carefully to determine and look ahead to next year. But for both those teams, I think good weeks, and I think they both kind of alluded to it a little in their comments of, you look at the field this year with a lot of new players, plus during an Olympic year, a top team's not there. You kind of look at this as a good opportunity, but I think for both of them are in pretty good shape as skips as we look ahead to the next couple of years.
I think so. Yeah. Their week was really good. They seemed to work well together as a team, the four of them. And so, yeah, this is just sort of setting the stage. And we talked at the beginning of the week, Sean, about there being, this being kind of the stage setting event for that next 4 to 8 years, as some of the other top teams that we're used to seeing and some of the top players might take a step back. So, yeah, Team Sturmey, they showed everybody what they can do. If there were any doubters, I doubt there are any more. And I mean, I think it's pretty impressive. Her baby is due in like 2 months.
Yeah.
It's just wild. Like the level at which she played. We saw Rachel Holman do that, of course, a few years ago, but it's still always an impressive feat to me. So yeah, the way they went out, probably not the way they would have wanted to, but overall great week for Team Sturmey.
Absolutely. So the other two teams that officially qualify for the playoffs, if not into the page, that is Manitoba Beth Peterson. They go undefeated through the round robin, but they lose to Kerri Einarson in the Friday afternoon games, then lost to Selena Sturmey Friday night. Other team that doesn't make it through is Taylor Stevens, as mentioned, lost to Christina Black. We'll talk about Taylor Stevens in a minute, but Beth Peterson, Scott, and Kelsey Calvert, in particular, really great week for them. Beth Peterson is really good TV because she just doesn't stop talking about like the shots and the pass. Like, she is really good TV. She's kind of like John Schuster in that sense of, you don't really need anybody to do the play-by-play because like Beth Peterson's just going to do it for them, which is really cool to see, like a really good TV character. And that was a fun team all week. Kind of tough for them to go through undefeated, but then, Friday happened and sometimes you have those days, and that was a tough time to have it for them.
Yeah, real tough. And like, Kelsey had been so good and so clutch all week. Even in the first game on Friday, like they were pretty close. It wasn't a runaway game like some of the others we saw Friday, but then it all sort of fell apart for the whole team. In the evening, the lead was the high at 83%. Next was Beth herself at 67, throwing third rock. So it was a rough go for the rest of the team there. And it's not like Sturmey was doing them any favors, right? So when you have that, you get pretty lopsided pretty early. Not the way you want to go out, but overall they had a pretty good week. And I think that combination at the back end is pretty good. Beth Peterson has been knocking on the door sort of as a skip for a long time. And it seemed like the team was really responding to having Kelsey throwing those last rocks and really taking a bit of that burden off Beth Peterson. Like we've seen that from other skips, even going back as far as Randy Furby, right? Not having to have the pressure of that fourth rock throw. And it seemed to work for them. So we'll see if they continue that going forward. Every time they
Scott,
showed,
like in terms of a comp too, I'm thinking even John Morris as somebody who almost has too much energy to be a skip.
yeah, that's
right.
true.
Like needs to sweep, needs to be moving around to sort of work off that energy. Like she has that kind of vibe to her as well.
Yeah. Every time they showed her, she was chomping on the gum. It reminded me a bit of Colleen Jones chewing gum, but Beth seemed like she was having more fun than Colleen usually did. But it was, I don't know, it was the image that brought to mind for me. But overall, I think a good week. We'll see that back to, I think, stay together and see what they can do as a team over the next 4 years.
And as I mentioned, the other playoff team is Taylor Stevens. They go out to Christina Black, but I think, Scott, early game of the year contender, Thursday afternoon, Taylor Stevens against Haley Armstrong from Ontario. It was essentially a playoff game. Winner would get in. The loser was out. Both teams end up shooting in the high 80% range. Taylor Stevens cracks a 4 in the 7th end to take a 6-2 lead. And then Haley Armstrong gets a 2 in the 8th. Okay, great. All right. That's fine. You still got a 2-point lead. But in the 9th end, Haley Armstrong is sitting 1. Taylor Stevens tries a double to score, over curls, removes 2 of her rocks, gives up a steal of 3 to go down 7-6 going into the 10th end. And then she makes an absolute pistol with her last very thin double to score 3 to win the game. Team Ontario and their last, they were looking at what to do. They end up throwing a guard, and I can't remember if it was Michaela Robert or Rachel Steele, the front end. What one of them says, she has that thin double, and I think it's Haley Armstrong who says it's really tough, and if she makes it, she makes it. And it was really tough, and she made it, and an absolutely amazing shot, especially to come back less than 15 minutes later from what could have been a catastrophe to make that shot. Absolutely incredible. And even with that shot in the 9th end, which would have been a 0, she still throws an 89% game. And in that situation, like absolutely just that, to me, that was the game of the week. It was the most entertaining game of the week for me. And just the shot making all around was incredible and just a really fun finish.
Yeah, everybody played well that game. It was a lot of rocks in play, interesting shots, interesting strategy. I agree. I had it on, Sean. I was working, and I had it on my laptop on the side, and I went, "Oh my god!" Like I yelled really loudly, and one of the guys at work was like, "What is happening?" Yeah. So I said, "Oh, come look at this fun shot." But it was very, very exciting, and you're right, the bounce back was pretty incredible. After the first games on Friday set up that Nova Scotia match on Friday night. I was pretty happy that they got to do that, play that game together. The teams shared a hug after the game. Team Stevens being kind of the next Nova Scotia team coming up, and Team Black being the sort of experienced Nova Scotia team, saying, "Hey, come on, join our club." It was kind of a cool, I won't say passing of the torch, but a welcoming into the high stakes curling family. I didn't say anything about Team Black, Sean. I thought they had a really great week. Tough way to go out, but it kind of is what it is. They've picked the wrong game to have their worst one. So good week overall.
Yeah. So elsewhere across the pools, in Pool A, Ontario misses out on the playoffs in that last draw. The rest of the table, Saskatchewan, Jolene Campbell 3-5, Taylor Reese Hansen 3-5. Northwest Territories is 2-6, as is Quebec and Yukon goes 0-8. Only team in the field not to get a win. Anything else stand out for you, Scott, on the Pool A side?
Well, my winner pick, Sean, BC, was on the wrong side of the standings at the end of the week, but I'll say when they weren't playing on TV, they were pretty good.
Yeah, they were just not good on TV.
Yeah, maybe a bit of nerves from the first time being there, and like they played Kerri Einarson really tough at the end of the week. We're winning going into the 10th in that one against Team Stevens. They took them to an extra end, scored. They had to steal an 8, get a 3 and 10 to go to an extra, end up dropping it, but they had some good showing. So probably a bit of a stretch for me to pick them, but it's kind of boring to pick Kerri Einarson, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We go with the interesting picks here. That's what we
cheer
do.
for the storylines, right?
That's right. So over in Pool B, Manitoba Peterson, Nova Scotia Black, Alberta Sturmey were your playoff teams. Rest of the table was Northern Ontario, Krista Scharf 5-3, as was Kayla Skrlik from Alberta. And then Prince Edward Island and New Brunswick, couple rookie skips were 2-6. Newfoundland and Labrador and Nunavut finish at 1-7. Scott, anything stand out to you from pool number B?
Well, Krista Scharf, they just lost to the 3 teams that finished ahead of them.
Yep.
Right. Lost to the wrong teams. So tough for them. We'll see what comes next for their team. I haven't seen any announcements, but who knows?
Yeah.
It will be sad if we don't see them back at Scotties, because it's fun when the Scotties is the biggest event for your team and you do well at it. I just kind of like that. I don't know.
No, I agree. And Vic talked about during one of their games how the start of the week he asked Krista how she's doing, and she just said she's tired.
Yeah.
Which, given everything that's gone on in the past year, plus 2 teenagers and who are both, I think, involved in high level sports and trying to do it yourself as well. It's just a lot for her to do. And it'll be interesting to see what happens with that team over the course of the summer. Now,
yeah, Sean, I mean, sorry, I'm tired, and all we do is this.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, I get it.
Yeah. So there you have it. That is the Scotties Tournament of Hearts. For our picks, neither of us were correct. You mentioned, Scott, you had picked Taylor Reese Hansen and British Columbia, but you had them over Canada. So you did have Kerri Einarson in the final. You had Christina Black winning the bronze. I had Christina Black beating Krista Scharf in the final. I had Manitoba, Caitlin Laws winning the bronze medal. So each of us get one medalist right, wrong color, and picked 2 teams that were not on the podium. So there you have it, the 2026 Scotties Tournament of Hearts. I'd also say good job, Mississauga. If you look at the attendance figures over the course of the week, 4,000 people there in the final. The playoffs were really well attended. Lowest playoff draw was Friday afternoon, not surprisingly, just under 3,500 people. The numbers during the week weren't great, especially Sunday, Monday, but there was a big storm in Southern Ontario. So you can't necessarily take it exactly for, that it's a reflection on it, but the attendance was pretty good on the weekend, given the sort of the size of the building. It wasn't sold out by any means, but I think pretty good. 63,500 attendance over the course of the week. So that's going to be down from most Scotties. Again, mitigate a little bit for the weather early in the weekend. Fewer people travel to these events during an Olympic year than normally. So I don't know, if Mississauga would get another. I like the idea of putting it in a bigger population center in a year where fewer people on average are going to travel to these events. But certainly it wasn't Montreal 2014.
You mean Montreal 2014 bad?
Where all good seats were still available.
Yeah. You're right. That building's a little weird. The Maurice Richard Arena in Montreal. But you're right. I kind of like this idea where if you're not going to get people traveling to the event, put it somewhere where people might think, well, what am I doing tonight? Maybe I'll go check out curling.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So capacity for the Paramount Fine Food Center is 5,100 for basketball, a little more for concerts. So take out a few of those seats for curling with what you lose on the media bench and the TSN booth.
Yeah.
So just call it 5,000. So yeah, not a sellout, but again, for a place they've never been before,
not bad.
Not terrible. Yeah. All right. So Scotties Tournament of Hearts in the books. Any last words on the 2026 Scotties?
I'm interested to see what the legacy of this is 4 to 8 years down the road, and see how many of these players that debuted here are consistent fixtures at this event down the line.
Yeah, I agree. It will be interesting to see who emerges out of this group and continues on this path. So with that, Scott, let's turn our attention to the 2026 Winter Olympic Games, Milan Cortina, and the various other places where the Olympics are taking place. I think it's 7 different cities are hosting events. No Canada House this year because of that.
Where do you put it?
It's just too spread out.
Exactly.
So this seems like it'll be the future of the Winter Olympic Games. It's really hard to find places to host. It's my understanding that in 2030 in France, it'll be similar. Things will be pretty heavily spread out. But for the purposes of the Olympic Games, it will be in Cortina itself. And the mixed doubles is kicking off Wednesday. We're recording this on Tuesday, and I don't know if this will go up on Tuesday or Wednesday. I'll try and get it up Tuesday, but it might be Wednesday. We'll see. So you might have already seen some of the action from Italy as it kicks off before the opening ceremonies. But Scott wanted to talk about some of the things that you see in a curling broadcast. So I know a lot of the folks who listen to us watch regularly, but this is the time where new folks will be coming in to watch the sport. It's a time where people who maybe only watch it during the Olympics or randomly if it's on a Briar Scotties World Championship. So as we get into this time where I think a lot of people are going to be watching a lot more curling than normal, Scott, what are the big things that you look for in a curling broadcast that can indicate to you or give you a sense of what's going on during the game?
So I think the big one for people to look out for is to pay attention to who has hammer. I'm not saying that this is a shot at Dean, but understanding who has hammer is pretty important. So if you're watching a game and you're wondering, like, why is this team playing this kind of style, right? Teams that have the hammer in general want to be able to leave an open path to the center for the skip's last rock. Whereas the team who doesn't have the hammer ideally would like to get in the way of that and make it very difficult for the last rock to score. So if you're watching with somebody and you're saying, why are they putting a rock way the heck out there on the side? And it's because, well, they have last rock and they'd prefer play go to the side of the house so that they've got an open draw on their last one to score. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a big one if you're trying to explain to people about curling. The idea of last rock, we want to keep it clear to be able to score. We don't have last rock, we want to get in the way and junk it up so that makes it harder to score.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things too at the rec level. You see people who are new to strategy and skipping not necessarily understand that, or like this idea too of you always want to be shot stone, like every shot throughout the course of the end. So I think a lot of folks who are watching casually, who don't watch a lot, might sort of struggle to necessarily understand that. So that's a really good point. Another thing, Scott, I think for folks who are coming in to watch is the vocabulary that teams use. I would say most teams now have gone away from, I mean, they still kind of use control, normal, board, but a lot of teams now, both men's and women's, are using times. So they'll say 9.5, 10.5, 11.5. And you'll hear after every shot, the skip will say a time to the front end. So we're looking at hog to hog. So from the throwing end when the rock crosses the hog line to the far end, and that can give you an indication of obviously the pace of the stone. But Scott, why do you think teams are using the times? And as a spectator, as someone who's watching it, and I know you sometimes will use your stopwatch while you watch, what kind of trends are you looking for in terms of the vocabulary, the times that they're giving out?
So on takeouts, the times are like a lot more accurate way to say those things that you and I say with normal, control, board, all that kind of stuff. So they're basically saying the lower that time is, the faster they want the shot to be. So in parlance of normal takeout weight for most of these teams is between 9 and 9.5 seconds hog to hog. 10.5 is usually like control, and then 11.5 is board, give or take, and anything over that, it will be hack or back line. The reason they do that is just like I said, it's much clearer to teams or to all players. And if you come from one team who has one idea of what control weight is, and you're playing with another player that has a different interpretation, you can really get your wires crossed. So just by saying the times, hey, that's a lot easier for us to understand.
Another thing in terms of the throw, people will say they want a positive release. And this is going to refer to the rotation that you're putting on the stone. And I would say 15, certainly 20 years ago, the teams threw very differently. There were teams, and usually it was kind of regional too.
Yeah.
Teams would throw different because ice conditions were very different around the world. So I do remember Heather Nedwin at the World, I think I'm pretty sure it was Heather Nedwin. They came to the conclusion of we can't even watch the Chinese team, Betty, Bingyi Wang, throw, because the release was so different. It was getting in their heads of like her and her team, Bingyi Wang, would all throw the same way, but different from how the Canadians would throw it. So they just had to basically stop watching their stones. But what does a release, when we're talking about a positive release, and can you really describe just how important a consistent release is for players? And is there a way on TV, because I think this is legitimately very hard on TV, can you pick up a good positive release versus a soft release, or maybe a pop or whatever else?
So yeah, a lot of times on TV it's very hard to see because the players are so consistent at doing it. So when the player's sliding out and throwing, you want to watch the way that they put the rotation on the rock. And it used to be they would just sort of rotate it and that would be the end. And now it's very, very common. So most players will have a bit of an arm extension when they throw. And as they do that arm extension, they put a little bit of outward movement on the rock. So they're sliding at the broom, looking to throw it straight. And it's almost like they push it just to the outside of the broom with their arm extension. And all that does is delays the point at which the rock starts to curl. So it's still going to curl the same amount, but it's much easier to control it if the curl break point is further down the ice. So the easiest way to tell if somebody has not put a positive release on it is if the skip starts screaming sweep right away.
Yeah.
And so you can tell for sure if it's going early that the release was either just straight at the broom, or even what we call it, dumping it a little bit, like getting it started by being soft with the release. So you, especially on the ice the way it is now, you want to set the rock and use that arm extension to set it just a little bit outside of where you're aiming. Or like Jesse on our team, he'll slide just inside the broom and set it back to the broom.
Right.
So that's another way some teams will do it. But if you don't do it, with the kind of rocks that they have, the amount of curl they can get on this ice, and this is why you mentioned Heather Neto and talking about the Chinese team. This is why the Chinese team would get 6 feet of curl, because they wouldn't set the rock.
Right.
So they would need to take a lot more ice because it would start curling a lot sooner. And because it had more time to curl, it would just curl further rather than, okay, I set it out a little bit. Now the break point is going to be that much further down. It's only going to curl 4 feet, but it's going to really go hard at the end.
Yeah, and I think the difference too with that is because all these teams play on the slams, they're playing on the same type of ice. Like you don't need to. They all can throw differently based on the conditions, but it's not as ingrained as we throw this way because this is what we play on the most. Right? They're all kind of playing on the same surfaces all the time, so you see that a little less in the variations. Another thing, of course, would be the sweeping. If you haven't watched in the last 4 years. Well, I guess the directional sweeping existed 4 years ago, but if you haven't watched, say, since the 2014 games, the sweeping is very different now. You will see primarily the person who is where the curl is coming into them. So if from the overhead, the stone is curling from right to left, the person on the left would be closest to the rock, vice versa. If the stone is going from left to right, the person to the right of the stone will be the inside usually, because that is the most effective at preventing the curl. But you will now see the person on the opposite side be the only person sweeping if you're trying to get more curl. And a lot of teams are using the knifing strategy, which is where you put your broom just slightly perpendicular to the stone. You're going to cross a little more than a 45-degree angle and knifing the stone that way to try and get the curl. Most teams will be doing that. If you have your broom straight across and sweeping directly in front of the stone, front and back, that most teams are using for distance sweeping. So you might see some variations in not only who's sweeping at what point, but also the style of sweeping, where they're putting the broom and how they're directing it in order to get better results. Another thing too that you'll notice, and I really notice it, is a lot of sweepers have adopted the 2-foot mini jump strategy. Like I don't know what else to call it.
The bunny hop.
The little bunny hops. Yeah, that they'll be behind their broom kind of hopping along with the idea that by hopping the way they hop, that's the most pressure they can get on the broom because the entirety of their body weight will be on the broom as they push. So those are some differences in the sweeping that you will see over the course of the games compared to like the bunny hop. I think is certainly pretty new. Knifing is pretty new. The directional sweeping is different, or excuse me, the same as it was in 2022 in terms of the concept. Just the execution of it is a little different. So the communication as it relates to the sweeping will be different. It's no longer just hurry hard and whoa. There's a lot more in terms of who's sweeping, what are you trying to accomplish with the sweeping than there used to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there any terminology, Sean, that you think would be uttered during broadcasts that people might have a bit of trouble understanding?
Well, I think one, Scott, that people that I've talked to, I think people who play, like they know in-turn, out-turn, but they don't know why it's called in-turn or out-turn. And I think for me, it's because of the position of your wrist. So the wrist is facing out on an out-turn, like it's facing away from you. And on the in-turn, it's facing in towards you. That's how I always think of it. But for you, like, out-turn, in-turn, any other way to think of it than that?
No, that's it. It's that when you finish your shot, you're turning it so that the outside of your wrist is coming up at the end, and same inside the other way.
Yeah. So for a right-handed player, an in-turn is going to be clockwise and an out-turn is going to be counterclockwise. For a lefty player, it'll be opposite. So a left-hander's out-turn will be clockwise and in-turn will be counterclockwise, which is why the World Curling on the draw to the button, so the last rock draw a last rock before the game starts. Draw to the button. The team that's closest gets the hammer in the first end. But they dictate not the turn, but the rotation. So they'll say you have to throw one clockwise, one counterclockwise, and that allows for different paths independent of the throwing hand of the player who's throwing those rocks.
Yeah. So when they say, Sean, it's a different path that we're playing. What does that mean?
Yeah. So when we're talking about paths, that is the track of ice that the stone is crossing over. So as a stone goes over the ice, it is breaking down the pebble. So the way things move on ice at a very microscopic level is the friction between the object and the ice melts the ice. So it is sliding on water. Again, not water that you can see, but at a microscopic level. This is how all things travel on ice. Whether you're skating or throwing a curling stone or sliding in your boots as you try not to fall down, going to the bus on a frigid morning, perhaps in the nation capital. But independent of that, that's how things move on ice. This is a very microscopic layer of water. So as that happens, the ice is going to change. The same is true of the sweeping. As you sweep, you're creating this microscopic layer of water. So as you do that, that particular part of the ice is going to get worn down at a different rate than a part of the ice that maybe doesn't have rocks going over it as frequently or perhaps at all. So if they're going out somewhere and they're throwing a wider turn or going to a center path or somewhere where just basically a rock hasn't been either in a while or perhaps at all, they'll say this is a fresh path. This is hasn't been broken down, or it's in the good stuff, they might say. So that's something to keep a track of. Like if they're throwing repeatedly over the same path, the same track of ice, that will react differently than when they switch to another part of the ice.
Yeah. So the sweepers will often say, oh, I'm going to need 2 feet more in this path. We think it's running faster, slower, that kind of thing. So it's not that things are wildly different, but at this level, it's different enough in different paths that the players are good enough to dial this up and back throughout the games.
Yeah, they're really good.
Yeah, they're really good.
Really, really good. Yeah. Anything else, Scott, from the broadcast?
Yeah,
or
so
just some terminology.
Quickly, because mixed doubles is first. In mixed doubles, things move a lot faster, and it's sometimes less obvious what they're trying to do because there's no one's standing in the house every time. Right? Some of the times they are, sometimes not. So really pay attention to what they're saying out loud in mixed doubles, and that will be what tells you what kind of a shot it is. If you're watching at a bar, say, and you don't see where the skip's broom is because there is no broom, and you wonder what they're doing, that's going to be a lot tougher. Whereas with the 4-person game, usually if you see a broom on the edges of the house, they're probably playing a draw towards the center line. Whereas if you see a rock or a broom right beside a rock, that's going to be a kind of takeout.
Yeah, very good point. Yeah, the closer the broom is to the stone, the harder they're throwing it.
Yeah, the less curl because there's less time for the rock to curl, the harder it's thrown.
Yeah, absolutely. And you'll see different strategies over the course of the week. In mixed doubles, it tends to be a very similar strategy because you have the stationary stones, one at the back of the 4-foot, one as a center guard, unless there's a power play and those rocks are moved off to the side. But it tends to be a very similar strategy there of get behind the center guard. But when we get to the 4-person game, that's when you'll see different strategies. Some players like to keep it a little more wide open, hit everything, don't have a lot of rocks in play. Other folks do like to have a lot of rocks in play. Mm-hmm. And then there are teams like Bruce Mount who can just beat you anyway. And it doesn't really matter. They're just that good. And Rachel Holman's the same. So things to watch out for there in terms of the strategy. But just broad strokes, I think the broadcasts are pretty good at not doing too much super technical stuff, but also giving you a sense of what is going on and why things are happening on the ice the way they are. And I'm a little sad that the crew won't be there. Unless things have changed from when they initially put out that press release. But what they initially announced is that the team, Bruce Rainey, Joanne Courtney, Mike Harris, will be in Toronto in a studio as opposed to being there. And all these things that we're talking about, it's way easier to see in person than at a studio at 4 a.m. in Toronto.
Yeah, definitely. So tough, but we'll do what we can.
Yeah. So there you have it. Those are some things to look out for at the Olympics. If we missed anything out, please do let us know. You can do that on the socials at Game of Stones Pod. Game of Stones Podcast on Facebook. You can reach out, gameofstonespodcast@gmail.com. And of course, if you want to hear everything else we got going on, we did our mixed doubles Olympics preview last week. That is up and running as of Wednesday over in Italy. The post or the episode's been up for a while, but the event itself is up and running as of Wednesday. We will release next week our 4-person preview. Very excited about that one. So do subscribe to get all that good stuff and everything else we got going on through the course of the Olympics and the season of champions. Wherever you get your podcasts, like, rate, comment, all that good stuff helps other people find the show and keeps us growing. Of course, gameofstonespod.com, all past episodes, plus a link to the merch. Scott, speaking of people reaching out to us on the socials, Albert Anderson reached out and noted that, and I did not notice this, but as soon as this was pointed out to me, that's all I could see. The images that TSN uses for the players, when they say, hey, let's meet the teams, and they show their photos, are very pixelated. And that this is this person, but they're not good.
Really?
Yeah. It's almost like they took a 2x2 photo and have made it like a 6x4. I don't know. It looks somewhat grainy. It doesn't look great compared to the power poses as he points out in the thing he sent us. The power pose looks great when they do those, but the still images just, they haven't quite gotten it right.
Huh. I had not noticed that. Maybe I usually fast forward through the beginning. But let me see if I can see it. Oh, hold on.
And it's one of those things, once you notice it, every game after you posted this, I was like, oh, damn it. Now this is all I can see.
Hey, yeah, you're right. I'm looking at it right now.
That's it.
Good catch.
Yeah. So there you go. Good job, Albert. Maybe, that's something we can look into over the summer. Maybe we can get someone from TSN on the pod. I will praise them. We love the TSN broadcast, but that'll be our question.
Oh, yeah. First question. So what we're really interested in.
What's with the still photos?
Oh boy. Boy.
So there you go. I would also note, just bear in mind, I'm going to say this. I didn't say this last week. I'll say it next week during the 4-person preview as well. Just as a reminder, CBC has no control over the camera shots.
Yeah.
Nor does NBC in the US or wherever you're watching around the world, like NHK in Japan. Just there's going to be bad camera shots. They're going to cut away from things at the wrong time. They're going to just do things wrong. And that's just the way it works at the Olympics. It's the IOC who is in charge of all the shots and the angles, and it's just a world feed and everybody has to deal with it. And I'm pretty sure that every sport has the same issue where the people who watch all the time do not like the way that it is covered in terms of the images that you see, that things are missed because the crews who are doing it are not necessarily crews dedicated to that sport. So
yeah,
withhold your wrath, if you have any, towards CBC on this. And same with NBC and everyone else around the world. Your frustration with the images you're seeing sits with the IOC.
Yeah, exactly. It all sits with them.
Yeah. So bear that in mind, but keeping that in mind as well, do enjoy. This only comes around once every 4 years. As I said, this is why we lift all those weights for this moment right now. So enjoy the Olympic curling, enjoy the mixed doubles. We'll be back next week with a preview of the 4-person event. Again, congratulations to Kerri Einarson on her 5th Scotties championship as she climbs up the ranks of all-time Scottie winning skips. It's been a big week in the world of curling, and a lot more to come. So until we talk to you again next week, keep those brooms on the ice and don't dump that insert.
Make the final.